Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business television podcast, 16 Tech takes 2 big steps forward. A Carmel cell phone recycler gains momentum. A big tourism push in southwest central Indiana. Eskenazi and Indiana Grown partner up. Indiana's IoT Lab opens. An Indiana company has lofty goals for what it calls a food computer. And we'll take a look at unresolved issues heading into May's special session. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. Indianapolis's 60-acre innovation community has announced 2 major boosts. The 16 Tech Community Corporation has landed a $38 million grant from Lilly Endowment and has announced its first development agreement. CEO Bob Coy and Indianapolis Deputy Mayor Angela Smith-Jones joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick to update the progress.
A big week, Bob, as you look at this $38 million grant from the endowment, $120 million investment from Browning, this basically says this project is going forward.
That's exactly what it says. These resources help us to bring the vision of 16 Tech to reality. We'll be able to use the funds for a new bridge, as you said, infrastructure improvements to make the sites shovel ready, and the first 4 buildings.
Let's talk about that first phase. This has been talked about for a long time, 10 to 15 years, over 3 mayors. The plans have changed. But now as you look at this first phase and what Browning will do with that $120 million, what are we talking about in terms of buildings and projects there?
We're talking about 4 buildings. The first will be 120,000 square foot lab office building, which will contain the Indiana Bioscience Research Institute as the anchor tenant, the IU School of Medicine, and then also another private sector corporation. The second building will be the repurposed Citizens Energy Water headquarters, old Citizens Energy headquarters, which will contain co-working space, maker space, and food court. The third will be a 100,000 square foot office building. And the fourth will be a 250-unit market rate housing unit.
Yeah. Apartments. Angela, to that point, live, work, play environment, and we talked about that bridge and connecting. What will that bridge, what will it ultimately look like? And a real connector there, and part of that, the vibe, I guess, that will be there at 16 Tech.
Well, that bridge is going to be iconic. A part of the focus and investment is how do we reactivate the waterway? It's a great asset that the city has, and it's now time for us to really tout that. And so having that iconic bridge with pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic connecting the northern part and the southern part of the district will really be a great sight to see. Also
announced this week a community investment fund that I know is an important part of the bigger picture.
Yes, so the city actually gave $3 million seed money, which will go into a community investment fund, and each tenant will contribute an additional 20 cents per square foot into that fund for sustainability. And that goes directly into the community, the incumbent residents, for training in STEM, engineering, to really allow the community to come in and be a part of the innovation district.
Yeah, Bob, talk about how transformative this can be. And once people begin to see buildings going up and that action starting, I know that'll have an impact as well. But this has the ability to totally transform that area around near the old Busch Stadium.
Oh, it really does. This will be a very exciting 60-acre site that will contain a mix of established companies in the life sciences, tech, and advanced engineering, as well as startups and universities. Over the next 10 years, it will those organizations will create 2,600 jobs. And there'll be a mix of jobs, entry-level, mid-skill, and high-skill jobs.
Yeah, and I know a big piece of this, too. You got the construction about to begin here in a few months, but the kind of the programming, the innovation programming, if you will, that will take place is going to be another important part.
Well, that's probably the most important part. I mean, the buildings are just the stage that will be used for the programming, which will focus on co-working space, maker space, wet labs for startups, innovation programming, workshops, the kinds of activities that will make this a very special community that will be attractive to innovators and talent.
All right, very good. 16 Tech CEO Bob Coy, also Deputy Mayor Angela Smith-Jones. Thank you both very much. We'll have you on again, I know, to talk about it.
Thanks a lot, Gary.
Still to come, Southwest Central Indiana wants more tourism dollars, and a health system wants more homegrown food. But first, a Carmel startup that essentially recycles cell phones for large companies is seeing success. Mobile Resell has landed clients including ESPN and United Airlines. Now the four-person team is looking to raise capital and grow its headcount. Co-founders Nate Pointer and Benjamin Jones came in studio to talk about the company.
You launched in 2014. Nate, talk about that. The two of you are technology guys. You kind of came together. What really prompted the launch of Mobile Resell?
Well, when we first met, we kind of realized we had complementary skill sets and experience, mine in web development, been in kind of the buying and selling of mobile devices. So when we first started talking, we kind of realized that we could use that, and then found there were a lot of problems that needed to be solved within the enterprise mobile device recovery.
And there's a security issue, all kinds of issues for companies, right? Mm-hmm. As they're getting rid of cell phones, tablets, and all those mobile devices.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, security is a big part of it. We kind of educate sometimes these enterprises on the risk of data security on mobile devices.
Ben, talk about how it works, because really you've got software, patent pending software, that's really the attractive part of this to a lot of companies. I mean, how are you landing these big companies? Because I mentioned some of those big names, United Airlines, ESPN, there's a long list, Morgan Stanley, and others.
Yeah, it's a very partner-driven industry. So we started working with a local company, delivered for them, delivered for their customers. Definitely, it's a very traditional industry. Our competitors are traditional recyclers. So when we approach companies, we let them know that it's a software-focused approach. So we want to focus on the automation of the logistics and getting the devices out of their environment. Also on the security side, what Nate was mentioning earlier, and also on securely, basically extracting as much commodity value out of the devices as possible.
So talk about how it all works. So you're basically going to companies and saying, we'll make this important, huge process much more efficient, right?
Exactly, yeah. So we go to them, we usually approach them saying, hey, we can take your model, what you've traditionally worked with, where IT managers have had to take a spreadsheet, they've had to reach out to remote employees and say, hey, you need to send your devices into us. They've had to serialize those devices and then look for a downstream partner to sell those to. With ours being an action-based platform, we tell them that you can save a lot of internal time and cost by utilizing our software. And basically the devices go directly from their end users or their employees directly to our facilities. And another big aspect is the data aggregation side. So it's a full visibility throughout the process, where before you really didn't know at what stage that device was in and what was going on during that process.
All right, last question here. You guys are in growth mode. You did $1.6 million revenue last year. You said the first quarter's already topped all of last year. So you're looking at big growth plans. You want to raise some money.
Exactly, yeah. So we've already done over 1.6 in this first quarter. We expect to do conservatively right around $5.5 million this year. But we also expect to bring on 10 to 15 people this year on the software development side, on the operations side, and also some account management and downstream selling of the devices. All
right, you're in the Yeager building, right, up in Carmel, the co-working space there, creative space. Nate Pointer and Ben Jones, Mobile Resell on a growth. We'll be watching your progress. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
Later in the podcast, a partnership focuses on getting Hoosier-made food in hospitals, and a first-of-its-kind lab opens in Indiana. But now, Radius, Indiana, which covers 8 counties in southwest central Indiana, is doubling down on tourism. The region says spending was up $11 million in 2016 compared to the prior year, but Radius has its sights set higher. President and CEO Jeff Quile discussed the organization's plans.
First of all, for folks who maybe don't know the footprint of Radius, I mentioned 8 counties. You're in southwest central Indiana with some iconic features within those 8 counties.
Well, that's absolutely right. When you think of tourism in southwest Indiana, you've got the French Lick Resort, been there for 10 years now and has really established itself. You've got the Goose Pond Fish and Wildlife Area, Hoosier National Forest, Marengo Cave to the south, and Spring Mill State Park to the north. We go almost from the Louisville suburbs clear up nearly to the Terre Haute suburbs, going east to west.
Yeah, and the Cray Naval Surface Warfare Center is there. So defense is a big industry for you, as well as manufacturing. But you really feel that tourism, already big, can be bigger.
The growth trajectory we've seen for tourism in the region has been above most of the other sectors we've got. Because French Lick is so relatively new, being only 10 years old, it's really continuing to develop its brand and to market itself. And as it grows, it's really bringing the public down and making them aware of more things we have in the region. So we're taking off with tourism in a way that some of the other industries aren't doing yet.
You mentioned a brand. You really want to create a brand for Southwest Central Indiana to be a destination for tourism. You've already done some initial work. Talk about your strategy and some of the efforts you have underway now.
Well, we did a study last year that took a look at what the overall impact was, and you cited some of those numbers, $200 million in impact in the region. 73% of those dollars stay in the region, 5,000 people employed in tourism in our region. So when we looked at those things, we realized what we had going. We knew it was growing fast. We talked to a lot of our partners throughout the region, convention and visitor bureaus, private sector folks, economic developers, and they all agreed we could collaborate to develop a regional brand, something that would make folks think of Southern Indiana as a place to go when they want to have a getaway.
Yeah, and this again is being very intentional. There are only certain things that areas can pursue legitimately, and you feel obviously that tourism is one that can pay off in the long term.
We've got a cluster of natural assets, and we haven't really tried to bring them all together effectively in marketing. So that's what we think we can accomplish, to give the visitor who's coming down for a day or two in one spot an understanding that they stay another third or fourth day, they can do something else.
Timeline, when would you do this new brand, if you will? How long do you think it'll be before you'll have something?
We have just stepped into this pool of water, so to speak, Gary. So we're underway now, very early stages. It'll take over a year for us to go through this because we want to do it right. We want to make sure we get the right information, give it the right consideration.
I only have 15 seconds. Got to get in a question. Radius Indiana making a trip to Japan, I think this fall.
Yes, that's right.
Economic development trip. What do you hope to accomplish?
We want to introduce ourselves to the Japanese firms. Without I-69, they've really never looked at us before.
All right, very good. Jeff Quile is the CEO at Radius Indiana. A lot going on in the region, in particular with tourism. We'll hear a lot more about that. Manufacturing crane as well. Jeff, thanks as always.
Thank you again, Gary.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, the Indiana IoT Lab opens its doors, and an ag tech startup has global goals. But first, Eskenazi Health and Indiana Grown are working together to create and provide more locally made food offerings in the hospital's food service areas. The hospital already sources all of its proteins and milk from Indiana farms. Eskenazi Health CEO Lisa Harris talked about the effort with Barb Lewis in the Business of Health.
I guess the easiest question to ask right off is why do this?
Well, we care a lot about the health of our community, and there isn't anything that is more foundational to good health and good nutrition. And here we are in a state that grows a lot of great food. So we thought, we should support our local farmers. There's certainly the economic impact. There's the importance of reducing the carbon footprint that is involved when you ship food cross country, the food wastage and spoilage that goes along with all that shipping. And then bottom line is, it's more nutritious and it tastes better.
So how are you going to do it, and how much food can you get from Indiana Grown to serve your patients?
It turns out a lot, more than we might have expected. When we issued the challenge to ourselves to procure as much food as we can locally, defining local as Indiana, north to south, east to west, we were at 3%. Within 2 years, we've gone to roughly 40%. And we're in partnership with 30 small farms and producers across the state. We source now 100% of our major proteins, beef, chicken, pork, and our milk from Indiana farms. And that's where the partnership with Indiana Grown comes in, because that coalition has introduced us to things, to individuals and farms and products that are out there that we didn't even know what might be available to us. So it really has catalyzed. And we're going to push this as far as we can, but we're at about 40% now.
Okay, I want to go back to what will be offered, but the economics of this. When we usually think of buying locally, we don't always think, we think it might be the best thing to do and the healthiest thing to do, but maybe not the most economical thing to do.
Well, it turns out that this actually is, it looks like overall our costs are a little bit lower. And I think that's when you take all that goes into the cost of food that has to go long distances into account. But the biggest challenge, especially for large organizations, for us, we serve over 1 million meals a year to patients, visitors, staff. So it's really, we need a reliable supply, and the farmers need a reliable demand. And so we're working that out in sort of the closed loop within our organization so that we can demonstrate to others and get the ball rolling to create interest and bigger opportunity with other anchor institutions getting on board. I think that's when we can really have an impact across the state.
Okay, so this is really just gearing up then, if you will. This announcement this week is really just the start of it. It sounds like there's this kind of, like you said, a blueprint now that you're trying to form so this can be possible for other big businesses in Indianapolis.
Exactly. And I think we have made a lot of progress, but we see this partnership with the Indiana Grown as creating a real catalyst. We can see the trajectory. The curve is, the slope has increased dramatically in getting in that alignment.
All right. Well, Dr. Harris, thank you as always for being our guest on the show. It's a joy to have you here.
Thank you.
Later in the podcast, a food startup is on the Innovators with Dr. K, and Ion Economic Development looks ahead to May's special session. But now, the founder of the Indiana IoT Lab says the space is focused on an industry that will future-proof Hoosier businesses. John Wexler has long said Indiana can be a leader in the Internet of Things space. Reporter Mary Rachel Redman has more on the first-of-its-kind lab in the state.
It's been 1.5 years in the making, and the dream finally became a reality this week as Indiana IoT Lab Fishers held its official grand opening.
Over 800 people RSVP'd to come out and learn about Internet of Things. It's been an idea that John Wexler, John McDonald, and I, we all started talking about some time ago here in Fishers, and now we're seeing it come to fruition.
Symbolically, it says an awful lot to where we're headed, and the idea that we believe enough in this as a community that we're willing to invest in a facility, a 21st century infrastructure for our entrepreneurs to move Indiana forward. That's exciting to me.
The IoT Lab currently has more than 50 members and 9 dedicated suite tenants, including Indiana University.
When you think about the Internet of Things, it is almost infinite because it's anything with an on-off switch, right? So that is going to be things that haven't even been invented yet. I imagine a lot of our students are going to be looking at how we can make devices work better and hopefully be a little more in tune with us as humans. I hope it sends a signal to our students that they can have a career and their workforce life here in the state so that we keep the intellectual capital that we're producing as a university here in the state and continue to build out the economic strength of the state of Indiana.
The Internet of Things is big business, estimated to grow into over a $450 billion industry by the year 2020, a fact not lost on Fishers Mayor Scott Fadness.
I think it's the future of Indiana's economy, and to see this kind of energy brings me a lot of hope that we're going to be able to pivot our economy to where the world's going around this whole idea of a gig economy. We're well on our way.
Mary Rachel Redman, Inside Indiana Business.
Still to come, what can we expect from May's special legislative session? But first, a Purdue grad says his company has designed a food computer of sorts, an appliance allowing people to grow leafy vegetables indoors year-round. Heloponics says there are already dozens of pre-orders for its Grow Pod, and the company is getting ready to launch a Kickstarter campaign. Co-founder Scott Massey details the company in our Innovators with Dr. K segment.
I always ask my guests, how did you come up with this idea, or where did you come up with the idea?
So I originally worked on some NASA research studies at Purdue University, finding ways to grow plants in space. It was a great introduction to the technology of hydroponics, which is an advanced form of growing plants with no dirt, using only nutrient-rich water recycled over the roots in a closed loop. Most hydroponic systems are indoors, meaning they can yield crops year-round, independent of the season, using 95% less water and no pesticides.
Wow, so this really came from out of a classroom type project, right?
Yeah, the inspiration definitely came
That's
from that.
really phenomenal. So explain the specific innovation behind helioponics.
Well, the biggest problem in the indoor agriculture space is the inefficiency of energy.
Okay.
It's incredibly expensive to run the grow lights, as well as a multi-million-dollar facility that needs to be built just to grow this food. So we realized the application of the technology was not right, that a decentralized approach of building thousands of appliances inside of consumers' homes was a much more efficient application of the technology and the energy. And through our design, we're actually able to yield more produce with less energy.
So this deal is in the area of hydroponics. Can you explain to the audience what hydroponics really is?
So you use no dirt at all. You recycle just a nutrient-rich water constantly over the root structure itself, so the plants uptake all of the essential nutrients they need without any excessive amounts of water that are otherwise lost through runoff and field applications.
Fantastic. So what's the potential market for this innovation? What do you think?
Ultimately, I envision this being in every home in the world, being a common appliance. But initially, we're focusing on organic consumers.
Okay.
So really think of these people living in organic environments, typically in coastal cities, that want fresher, tastier food, but don't have the time, the labor to give, or even the space or climate to farm.
Yeah. What kinds of foods can they develop from this?
So primarily leafy greens, that's our bread and butter, but you can also do a lot of herb varieties and even some fruiting varieties such as cherry tomatoes or strawberries in our system.
Very good. Wow. So have you received any capital funding at this stage?
Yeah, we've been very fortunate to have some victories through the business plan competitions at Purdue and a number of other universities in the Midwest. But our most sizable capital investments have been from the Purdue Research Foundation through their Accelerator Fund and also the Elevate Ventures Black Award.
And Gary mentioned you're going to do a crowdfunding campaign, is that correct?
Absolutely. We've been working pretty extensively with the Purdue Westgate location in Crane, Indiana for that.
Very good, very good. What do you see as the growth potential for this, Scott?
Ultimately, I see us becoming the world's largest farming company without owning a single acre of land.
No kidding.
Only through this design do we have the possibility of causing the same disruption in the agricultural industry as the refrigerator in the ice industry.
Wow. And I understand you've got patent protection on this. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So we have multiple international patents currently pending on this, as well as many more to be filed.
That is fantastic. So what do you see your next steps in the year to come, this very next year?
Right now, we're currently expanding ways to expand our production, to increase volume, decrease the retail cost, to make this a more obtainable device for consumers to have, and also to increase the production and automation of our seed pods, which we sell as a subscription to the users and is actually able to yield a full head of leafy greens on a daily basis for someone who owns a helioponics grow pod.
Boy, that is really great. Well, on each and every show, Scott, I try to give Dr. Case prescriptions to try to help you out a little bit. So I came up with what I call it for you the 3 knowledge factors. The first one I put down was knowledge for the public. In other words, as you're explaining this now and explaining very well, you've got to get other information outlets to help consumers understand how this technology really enhances their hydroponic growing experience. And I think the more they understand it, the better. The second I put was knowledge in the industry. And what I mean by that is you need to get some expertise of those that can help you find distribution to scale up this whole operation to get to the goal that you're setting for yourself.
Absolutely.
And the third knowledge is knowledge with investors. And what I mean by that is, and I'm sure you're getting advice on this, is get some experienced investors that understand what we call smart money to help you understand the whole food space, and they can help you really grow this unique venture.
Right.
So I hope those 3 things really help you, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
And where can the audience find you, Scott?
So you can find out lots of information at heliponics.com. That's HELIPONIX.com.
Fantastic. Well, there you have it, Gary. A phenomenal innovation in this food space that is being developed right here in the state of Indiana.
And finally this week, after a chaotic end to the 2018 Indiana General Assembly, Governor Holcomb has called for a special session in May. KSM Location Advisor CEO Tim Cook and President Katie Culp weigh in on unresolved issues, key takeaways, and missed opportunities.
It was a crazy ending to the session, and a number of things did not get done. But as you look at this non-budget writing session, I'll start with you, Tim, big takeaways.
I thought the big takeaway was the software as a service being exempted from sales tax. That's something that Indiana has been grappling with for several years now.
It eliminated a lot of the confusion, and I think because there's so much focus with tech right now, that was a big one for the tech community.
Yeah, and there was some back and forth on the language of that bill, and I think ultimately it passed with the kind of language that the tech community wanted.
It was really good because they had a nice collaboration between government, the Department of Revenue, the tech community. The chamber was very involved in it, and I think it was a win-win for everybody.
Katie, how about you? Big takeaways?
You know, something that garnered a lot of national headlines was this Sunday alcohol sales, and leave it to me to bring that up. But I think it was great because we've had a number of clients who come to town and are like, are you kidding me? This was still a rule. I'd say on the downside, it did garner national headlines, and it pointed out to people who maybe didn't know that that had been a rule still on the books.
Right.
But hey, we made it over the hill there.
Over the top. And you know, it was viewed as a consumer issue, certainly, but do you think it has the potential to be somewhat of an economic development issue, maybe for what you suggest as that national attention it got?
I think it certainly helps us appear less backwards socially, and so I think everything that we can do to kind of position ourselves as forward-thinking and not so conservative is a good thing, especially as it relates to attracting tech workers and employers.
I want to get your perspectives on workforce. Certainly it's a big agenda item for Governor Holcomb, the state chamber. Everybody's talking about workforce. Tim, start with you. 2 bills did make it out. Your take, did these workforce measures, do you think, get to the heart of the challenges Indiana's facing?
I think they set the table for some of those challenges. Obviously, it was a non-budget year, and so a lot of the spending that needs to happen and needs to be approved, that will happen next year. I'm hopeful that this is the start of some real redevelopment of what we're doing with workforce and training and talent.
Katie, as you look at the workforce issue, it's such a big issue that everybody, again, is talking about. It probably is going to take more than one session, and certainly, as you say, a budget writing session to get it done. Your take on the 2 bills that made it through?
You know, I think there's a difference between being busy and being productive, and there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of interest in workforce development, and I really applaud the governor and his team for making it a focal point, and I'm glad that they're being thoughtful about it and not rushing into a solution that might not be the right one. With that said, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There are still a lot of silos in workforce development in Indiana, and it can be so effective if done correctly, and so I'm excited to see this next legislative session, not the short session here, but next year, see what happens with that issue.
And you think it's got the legislature's attention, maybe?
I feel like it's something everybody can get behind, don't you agree? I mean, both sides of the table, everybody wants to invest in our workforce and people that have transferable skills and that can help make us more attractive for economic development. How that's implemented gets, kind of viewed through different prisms.
Yeah, and I think one of the keys is what kind of training makes sense for different types of sectors. If you're a manufacturing company, your training needs are different than a tech company. And so as they're making changes to the programs, it's really important to keep that in mind as well.
Mentioned the chaotic end to the session late on a Wednesday night. A number of things did not get done, if you will, before the midnight deadline. Governor Holcomb, indeed, after several days, did call a special session for May. Some folks have criticized that. A lot of people support it. Your take?
Yeah, I think you can talk about the process of how we got there, but there was no doubt they had to come back that they need to come back for a special session. The federal tax reform is going to have a huge impact on the economy, and if Indiana's tax code was out of sync with the federal changes, then that would have been a disaster.
Katie, do you anticipate, certainly this tax issue will be one area of focus to be sure. Other people have talked about the Muncie schools situation. There are a couple of other issues as well undone. And folks are saying this needs to be a focused session, a very brief, just get what needs to be done and get it done and move on.
I agree. It's a short session. We've got to be laser focused on these tax issues. It's indisputable that we're a leader when it comes to cost of doing business and our corporate tax climate. So for us not to be responsible about this and fix anything that needs to be straightened up would be a really bad move for our economic development future.
Yeah. Also, in this session, the legislature did not pass hate crime legislation. Indiana remains one of, I think, 5 states that does not have special laws for hate crime. reaction?
You know, I live in Scienceville that tends to be a little conservative, and a lot of my neighbors, we talk about this type of thing. And there are different views on the issue, but the bottom line, economic development impact, is that employers, the Amazons of the world, they are looking at these issues. And when Tim and I get involved in some of these national site selection assignments, one of the first questions now, which is much different than 5 or 10 years ago, is having us take a look at what the social issues, what the social political climate is in different states and metro areas. And this is inevitable that it will rise to the top of the issue when someone's looking at Indiana. So hopefully next year we could maybe tackle this in a more proactive and effective manner.
Yeah, the thing is, any issue that impacts if a company site selects at a certain location, or if a individual wants to live here and work here, anything that impacts those decisions, those are economic development issues. And so I think the sooner that we focus on that, in addition to tax climate and business climate, I think it's going to make Indiana even more competitive.
So you think, and they're a little perhaps more difficult to define, but those culture issues, you view them as important issues, the issues that the State House should take a look at?
They're tricky issues, but it's, as Katie mentioned, it's what our clients are talking about, and it's how companies make decisions nowadays.
All right. Well, it was a crazy session, certainly at the end of the 2018 Indiana General Assembly. We've got more coming up with a special session. Tim Cook, Katie Culp, KSM Location Advisors. As always, great perspective. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Gary.
All right.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.